having Dr. Lisa Hightow-Weidman here today. I've known Lisa for many, many years, and have gotten to work with her a bit, particularly in HPTN, and she was a collaborator in our HB10096 study, and is always very innovative, always giving really fabulous presentations. So Dr. Lisa Hightow-Weidman is a physician, and at the university, she's at University of Virginia School of Medicine, where she got her MD from the University of Virginia School of Medicine. She did a residency in internal medicine at Stanford, as well as an infectious disease fellowship at University of North Carolina. And on top of that, she's got a master's in public health and epidemiology at University of North Carolina. Currently, she's a distinguished and endowed McKenzie professor and interim associate dean for research in the College of Nursing at the Florida State University, where she is now. Dr. Weidman is the founding director of the Institute on Digital Health and Innovation at Florida State University. She's an expert in development, implementation, and evaluation of digital health interventions to address the HIV care continuum for adolescents and young adults, and particularly among sexual and gender minority populations. And I think many of you know she's also heading up the newly funded leadership of the Adolescent Trials Network. So really an expert in this field. Her research interests include technology-based HIV prevention and treatment interventions for adolescents and emerging adults, specifically interventions that which is some of the fun stuff, incorporate game-based elements, self-monitoring and tracking, and provision of social support to increase engagement and impact health behavior. And she has developed technology-based interventions that aim to increase uptake and adherence to biomedical prevention and treatment, to increase HIV diagnosis, linkage, and retention and care, and to ameliorate stigma and increase resilience. All of this very much in line with the mission and the aims of our newly funded HIV Center. So it's great timing that you're here with us now. Thank you so much, Lisa, for being here, and I will turn the floor over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you. Make sure I can share my screen. All right, that worked, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
good.
Perfect.
Yeah, as an expert in technology, I was saying this is like, it always stresses me out the most that my screen won't share. So thanks, Bob, for having me. I did a talk here many years ago, and I was saying, they actually invited me to come for that one. So this one, I just got a Zoom invite. So I was saying I was kind of downgraded, but I'm gonna take them up for a visit at some point. So I do appreciate being able to talk. And I thought I would talk a little bit about kind of overall kind of the world of digital technologies to support HIV adherence. And then I'll talk a little bit about kind of our work in this space. And at the end, at the request of Claude, I have a couple of slides that I added in to talk about the newly funded Adolescent Trials Network. So as Chris asked me, this is a continuing education talk. I think you can get 1.5 credits or so. I don't have any disclosures to report, and the team will be in touch with you afterwards to get you information if you want the CE. So again, talk a little bit about how we measure and monitor non-adherence, where we are in terms of digital technologies and modalities, and some future opportunities and challenges, particularly focused on the work that we have done through our platform development. So, again, this is an audience that understands around kind of non-adherence, and this is looking at poor adherence across all chronic medical conditions, and the fact that there's about 50% of non-adherence overall is really kind of disturbing, given the cost of medication non-adherence to healthcare quality outcomes, and overall kind of cost to the medical system. So about 1/3 of medical prescriptions that are written aren't even filled. And the annual cost, and again, this is old data at this point, but the most updated that I could find is about $500 billion. About 16% of the total U.S. expenditures is really kind of related to non-adherence. And when we think about barriers to adherence, and this is, there's many others, but when, looking at things, related to patient in terms of their own psychosocial issues around substance use or depression or beliefs, health beliefs and literacy, denial, factors related to the treatments that we're prescribing, the complexity, their inconvenience, side effects, or just fear of side effects. And then, a myriad of factors that really are outside of the patient, as control in some ways around kind of, the complexity of our healthcare system, costs, insurance, access to care, stigma, distrust, mistrust, and then, relationships between practitioners and patients. And again, I know a lot of you at the HIV Center focus on a lot of these factors as it relates to adherence to medications, as well as to other preventative treatment modalities. So when we think about measurement, and I think there's measurement and then there's monitoring, right? And they're kind of two different but kind of overlapping topics. We think about kind of indirect and direct ways, but even across these kind of divide, there's some, it's really not a kind of a black and white area. There's kind of, when we say something is direct, it doesn't always mean that you're really getting the most accurate information, because people can do things that even though that it looks like they're taking a medication, that they aren't really. But in general, when you think about kind of indirect and direct measurements, indirect includes self-reports, pill counts, looking at the pharmacy refill, using electronic adherence monitors, which I'll talk a little bit more about, and then some of our adherence tracking apps. And the good things is it's, for the most part, it's easy to operationalize. You do a questionnaire, although again, as someone who's now trying to harmonize data collection across a net trial network, even the right measures, it's not always easy to figure out exactly what the right measures are to capture self-report. But for the most part, kind of easy to operationalize. And some can provide real-time information. We talk about these EAMs. But again, it can provide incomplete or inaccurate data, pill counts, self-report, again, subject to recall bias, reporting bias, et cetera. And it can be costly depending on, your apps and how you're doing your tracking. Direct measurements include directly observed therapy and video observed therapy, DOT and VOT. Pharmacologic measures of adherence, so looking at drug, dried blood spot, or other types of collection, and then ingestible sensors or digital pill systems. And again, these can be more challenging to implement, creating a pill that can be taken and then monitored and coded, which we'll talk about, and can be more costly. But again, can provide verification of medication ingestion events. If someone takes an ingestible pill, you actually see it, working its way through the GI system, and some can provide real-time information. So, the digital health, I've been doing digital health, since back in the day when it was eHealth, and then became mHealth. It was sort of pre-mobile phones, pre-smartphones, and throughout. And, the field has expanded, beyond my ability to keep up with kind of all of the pieces of digital health. When you think about kind of the emergence of AI, precision health, all of these kind of personalized therapeutics, but kind of the overall space is that these, in terms of digital health and adherence, is they really can serve as a bridge, provide some of these measurements, and potentially the chance to intervene in real time. And I think this is the place where currently we've really been trying to think through how to move beyond measurement and monitoring and into actionable adherence interventions. Each of these technologies has their own, specific advantages and limitations, and I'll kind of briefly talk about them next. So, the first kind of generation EAMs, people remember the MEMS caps, were kind of, at the time, very revolutionary. You open the bottle, it, records that opening, and the data is stored kind of locally within the cap. You bring the bottle in to an appointment, information's downloaded. And again, for a while, this was really kind of a standard of care, or even gold standard in terms of monitoring adherence, I think, in a lot of interventions that we did. A review and meta-analysis of these kind of first gen EAMs across 79 RCTs, showed that there was some, improvement in adherence compared to the control group. But the real key factor was that it was feedback kind of delivered to patients on their adherence at the time that they came in to download their patterns. That was the largest factor influencing this. However, when you looked at not just kind of self-reported adherence, but actually viral suppression, there wasn't as much of an impact in terms of these interventions. And again, not all of the studies measured viral suppression, but again, you saw kind of less of an intervention effect when you actually looked at the biologic outcome. So we move on to the second generation AAMs, and these were different in that they transmitted information in real time. So the information wasn't stored on the device, still kind of the same principle: open cap, record, close cap, record, that information sent, but it transmitted to a kind of a central station that allowed for more real-time information. So for instance, WisePill, AdhereTech, again, being able to send reminders, also kind of let people know when and let staff know when people weren't opening and closing their machine. So again, across a wide range of studies, this is just a few here, again, results kind of mixed. In some groups, it did improve adherence compared to control. In other groups, it didn't. And again, when they looked at comparison between groups that had kind of the first gen and then the second gen that actually allowed more real-time adherence interventions, there was actually improvements in self-reported adherence, but again, not a lot of change in viral suppression. So, my takeaway from these is that, again, they're reminder devices, right? And so for some people, reminders may be enough, but the interventions that we have kind of wrapped around these really haven't been, I think, maximized to really kind of intervene in real time. And so that's sort of why we're seeing kind of these, mixed results, I would say. Then we've moved from these kind of pill boxes, which I sort of just described, to all different kinds of packaging, right? So, these pill bags. So being able to thinking about, okay, well, what if somebody has more than one pill bottle? How do we kind of record, that? So creating these bags or other pill boxes that allow kind of the ability to measure more than one medication and different timing of medications. Again, more suitable for more complex medications. Again, and then these blister technologies, which is, as someone who I was trying to actually pop one of these out this morning, and I was so frustrated, and I just gave up because I can never work these. But this idea that when you pop a pill out of these blister things, you can that records that event. So all of these, again, pluses and minuses. The key thing is that none of them are measuring actual ingestion of pills, right? They're just measuring you doing something that is the usual start of taking the medicine, right? Which is kind of getting the pill. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually taking it. So bioingestible sensors, again, there's this has been a work that's been done both in the space of HIV and other diseases. Within HIV, Peter Chai has been kind of led a lot of this work. And the idea is that, you're really kind of composed of this sort of radio frequency emitter, which is kind of in a gelatin capsule, which then creates kind of encompasses the actual medication, creating this sort of digital pill. And once the digital pill is ingested, it is exposed to the stomach contents that, basically kind of energizes this frequency emitter, creates this signal. The signal is read either by kind of an external reader device, as you can see in, I think, the B of the bottom picks, or it can be a patch, as in the top pick. So something that reads the fact that this medication has been kind of processed in the stomach. That information is then transmitted through the cloud to a system that can then provide this information to staff, providers, as well as back to clients or participants or patients through apps or other types of kind of portals. So the idea is that, again, you really are monitoring things in real time. Once this goes through the process, all of the materials are kind of emitted through feces, and theoretically it's sort of there's no additional issues once it's kind of out of the body. So again, this is work that's been done in HIV, in other types of disease states, Hep C, organ transplants, as well as I think a lot of work being done in the field of psychiatric disease around schizophrenia, et cetera. There was a narrative review that again, is, if you're interested, I would highly recommend reading that. Again, that even when you think this is like can detect everything, there's still issues, right? So the mean accuracy of the sensor to detect medication was not 100%. So there's still faults in systems, right? The 4 studies that did look at biologic outcomes, however, did show some positive results. There were some qualitative pieces that patients, providers kind of liked this, but there was no kind of challenges with taking the pill. It wasn't didn't change kind of the challenges with ingestion and or in anything related to the patch or the external reader. But again, this is not cheap, right? To kind of create these sensors, and I think there's again, is this something that really is ready for clinical deployment? I would say probably not. I do think thinking through kind of who are the best patients, in terms of disease state, acute versus chronic disease, new starts, people who are failing therapy, how to monitor the adherence data, right? Who is monitoring it? What are we, again, similar to what I talked about earlier, is what are we doing with information when we find out that people aren't being adherents? And again, who's going to pay for this? So another type of direct monitoring is through VOT. This was the eMocha platform, which actually has changed its name to, I think it's Scene or something, Scene. But they were kind of early pioneers of creating these sort of platform to monitor directly observed therapy. A lot of the work centered around tuberculosis, and issues with directly observed therapy. Again, you can imagine getting people to come in versus going to them, obviously lots of issues. So the use of video allowing it to be easier to kind of follow and do, again, more autonomy and convenience for both patients and providers. And VOT has been recommended by the WHO as an alternative. 2 different types. Again, you can think about synchronous, so things in real time. I call you up, we're on the Zoom, you take your pill, I watch you take your pill, I tell you things, we talk, goodbye. Or asynchronous, where you film yourself on the Zoom and then you send me the video. So again, there's pluses and minuses to both of these systems in terms of time and convenience, as well as kind of internet connectivity issues, et cetera. So moving a little bit more into kind of the field that I've lived in for the last, many years, around kind of other M Health interventions. And, when I think about, M Health, there's a lot of apps. I've made a lot of them. A lot of them don't exist anymore. Have had some have had slower deaths than others. But, when you think about kind of M Health interventions, there's, kind of 4 common pillars that I think about, are components that are really, kind of should be in all M Health interventions in some way, shape, or form at this point. These are things that we know through all of the work that we've done, that are kind of the critical kind of key ingredients for being successful. Now, what's kind of wrapped around that, these key ingredients, what makes it special, what makes it unique, is the places where I think is where I think the future is really going, is around the tailoring, is around kind of the other hybrid type things, where maybe we have in person or personal touches, other gaming, et cetera. So all of those other things are what make unique M Health interventions. But the common features really should be there, and they're reminders, some level of reminding. Is that a word? Probably not. Some level of reminding that take a medicine. And again, that's a no-brainer. It's really it's a glorified alarm in some way, but we can up it and make it more tailored by providing messaging around it, et cetera. Resources, so information, we know, again, from all of our interventions, whether mHealth or in person, that information is, kind of, needed, but not sufficient as a way to change behavior. So, having that within the mHealth intervention, skills building activities. I think we've also learned that people don't like to read. And so regardless, again, youth particularly don't like to read. So, the delivery of things using multimedia formats, really kind of, ensuring that, again, the delivery of this information is tailored to your audience. Some sort of tracking and self-monitoring, right? So again, whether that's via kind of daily diaries, via ecological momentary assessments, via just trackers, but some, tracking of adherence, and then provision of, again, feedback, the more tailored, we believe, the better. But again, some level of being able to track this. And then connections. And again, connections can be to providers, to clinics, to study staff, to peers, social support, et cetera. So these are, I think, again, the way I think about kind of the common ingredients to be successful in this sphere. SMS, to me, SMS is a reminder, and there's been many studies that use SMS, many, meta-analysis, integrative reviews, systematic reviews of systematic reviews, yada, yada, that show the feasibility, acceptability of this, and moderate short-term effects. And so this is really, a recommendation in terms of from the WHO. Sustained effects is where we see challenges, again, particularly among youth. Larger effects is when, you're not sending these daily, when there's some bi-directional communication, again, that connection to providers, and when there's personalized content, again, that tailoring. So, in my mind, I think of SMS as kind of an mHealth standard of care. That unless there's a reason why, it can't be, we can include some sort of SMS or reminders of something, then because those exist in the commercial space, those exist, on iPhones or Androids. They, the ability to do this is something that people have access to, and is, to me, again, kind of, really kind of a standard of care. So just a smattering of a couple different apps that have been out there. P3 was an app that we developed through the Adolescent Trials Network last iteration, and the primary paper is in development, but we are presenting the results at SBM in March. But this app was kind of built through gamification, adherence, through tracking, self-support, information. There was also an intervention arm of the P3 Plus arm that had in-app adherence counseling through text messaging. And overall, we did show improvements at 3 months in biologic outcome of tenofovir diphosphate. Sadly, so this app, in the middle of the trial, we realized the company we're working with decided to go in another direction in terms of their focus. And so P3 was sort of dead before the study was even over in some ways. But, in thinking about all the features that were successful, we've moved them into kind of our platform that I'll talk about in a little bit. PrepMate, this is a work done by Al Liu, Susan Buckbinder, Hyman Scott out at UCSF, San Francisco Department of Health. And this is an app that is kind of built on that SMS premise around check-in messages between patients, providers, et cetera. And they also showed improvements in PrEP adherence at 36 weeks. This intervention is being moved into a composite suite of interventions around PrEP choice, and helping folks adhere to PrEP through the new ATN that we're leading. So I'll talk about that. And then Positive Links. This is an intervention app developed by Karen Ingersoll and colleagues at University of Virginia. And this is really focused on people living with HIV. And the app has connections to clinical staff in terms of daily queries of medication adherence, appointment reminders, et cetera. And they've done a lot of work showing that there are improvements in viral suppression up to 12 months. So this is just a smattering of different apps that are out there, or maybe not out there anymore, but kind of some of the levels of effects. There's also a field of health, digital games for health. the idea that games can be used to address kind of different factors, particularly around youth, can be fun. So the engagement piece, which is something that we, focus on a lot. How do we make people use these apps? How long should they use them, et cetera? A couple different examples of games that have showed some effects in terms of for youth living with HIV and for those on PrEP. Again, the whole new field of avatars, chatbots, or the kind of longer name of embodied conversational agents. I think this field is obviously, there's not a day that goes by that I don't get something in my inbox around, AI, chat GPT, some sort of, information, whether it's don't use it to review grants, which seemed obvious, but to other ways, other things. So I think we're really only in the beginning of seeing kind of where this field is. I did work in this area before ChatGPT. We were actually creating our own message libraries and natural language kind of algorithms to provide information. Our intervention was around disclosure, and it was really hard. And so I'm sad that we did that before we had these tools. But I think again we're going to be seeing some more movement in this field. Current interventions have been I think feasible, acceptable, not a whole lot of movement in terms of efficacy. But again, I think we're only seeing the beginning of the level of complexity of kind of conversations and what these ECAs can do. So it'd be remiss to kind of just not at least mention, some things that, we wrestle with when we think about digital health. I think, smart pills, these digital pills are obviously kind of makes it, kind of it brings it to the most light, right? Of like, in taking a sensor and, kind of tracking that whole kind of piece. But really with all of these kind of interventions, the issue of kind of, do people really know what they're consenting to? Again, particularly if you're not using a platform that you've developed, but using kind of things that are external. We think about, our informed consent documents, and then we think about, I think about kind of the documents that I have to sign on my phone whenever like iOS updates, the kind of all these things, they're very different purposes, right? Our informed consent is to make people aware of what they're doing and how they're being protected. Those types of consent documents or notices are really meant to protect the company from anything. So I think we just have to think through that. How are we providing that information? I think device-related prevention or therapeutic misperception or misconception. So this idea that if they're using a device that's monitoring something, even if they're not taking the med or doing things right, the fact that they're, have this device that's being monitoring them, this idea that, if something was wrong, they would, be told. And so I think, being really clear about what's being monitored and, what we're doing with results that aren't necessarily maybe, beneficial to the health outcomes of the patients, who owns the data, et cetera. That's a whole, obviously another rigmarole, in terms of technology failure, what do we do about that? I think a lot of, the more advanced we get, the more complex we get, the more likely we're going to see more technology failures. And then obviously equitable access. So, and again, that's not only to necessarily smartphones, but to data and to kind of, even like cost of data, which varies, dramatically across the globe. So I'm just going to switch gears now. And for the last part, just talk about the work we've done to create a comprehensive digital health platform. And our work builds off of something called health empowerment. So I think, the things that I've seen, again, over the many years of doing this is that, there's a lot of challenges to kind of taking our digital health interventions and really kind of making them more broadly disseminated, showing sustained impact. And these, relate to the fact that user engagement is low. Creating content for DHIs is time consuming, right? It's inefficient, writing content, creating all these things when we know that there's, again, core content, core components, et cetera. And again, the ability to then add new stuff as things are, ongoing, basis becomes also can be almost a full-time job in itself. So, there's been a lot of money spent through NIH, through other, public grants, et cetera, around DHIs. But again, really, there's been less in terms of kind of moving, either effective DHIs or DHIs that have the potential for effectiveness across different groups into more disseminated audiences. Again, I think, part of this is also, thinking about kind of the digital divide, and again, just making sure that we're thinking about, how we design mHealth interventions that are able to reach who we want them to reach, and don't chew up, data to the space where they become, again, unattainable for folks, and thinking about how we can, again, use a movement towards making a lot of these more available through kind of framing the internet as a human right, as another way to kind of, again, ensure that we're, once we do move to make things scaled up, that everyone would have access. So in our group, again, which was, again, we were at UNC for many years and then moved over to Florida State, we've thought a lot about how to kind of facilitate the digital transformation at scale. And again, really kind of to streamline the process of developing interventions, deliver them, ones that are engaging, really trying and create a broader adoption by making DHIs more affordable, and then to think about how we can utilize user engagement from each of the interventions to, again, keep making the interventions better, to design more adaptive and more supportive interventions. So this is just a little bit about the work we've done. Again, I've been around a long time, as Bob said. My earliest work was around seeing increasing HIV infections among Black MSM in the South. That was kind of, pre-end the epidemic. So that study that I did really kind of was showing kind of early on, the use of the internet to meet sex partners. Again, it seems like way in the past, but again, it was through chat rooms and other places. And at the time, honestly, it was really only being reported in bigger cities like San Francisco, New York, et cetera. So seeing this, the use of things like, AOL chat rooms and other things, early sex sites, pre-Grindr, pre-Jacked, et cetera, was new. And so at the time we thought, let's develop a website. Again, young gay men, bisexual men, other men of sex with men are using the internet to meet sex partners. What if we designed an online intervention to meet them where they were? That was the beginning of health empowerment. Again, at the time, you can see it was healthempowerment.org because it was a website. We then developed it into a mobile optimized website. And again, you can see on the bottom line, this was kind of, where the technology was kind of changing across the time sphere that we were kind of developing this intervention. So this developed into Health Empowerment 1.0. And we ran a large RCT throughout North Carolina. This was part of a K award that I had that turned into an R01 that did show a statistically significant reductions in condomless anal sex. Again, this was pre-PrEP. PrEP was kind of coming onto the scene in 2012, but again, by the time we were launching this, it really was kind of too late to make that part of the outcomes, and so the condomless anal intercourse was our main outcome, and we did show improvements. I've then spent many years doing many different apps, always kind of working on health empowerment, but thinking about, should we, kind of riding the tech bubble of, oh, we need a new app. We need a new app. We can create an app to do this. We can create an app to do that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And with each app, they had new features, right? So for Epic Allies, we really kind of leaned into gamification and creating games. Test Rehearsal, we leaned a little bit into more like, again, conversational agents and AI. Same with Tough Talks, which is around disclosure. P3, as I talked about, we leaned into self-monitoring and tracking and forums, et cetera. So all of these things, we sort of learned what these kind of features were that worked. Some worked better than others. And then moving forward, we've sort of said, enough of doing this, because again, none of these apps that you see on this list really are something that you could have access to. And thought, we needed to do something different. And so that brings us to Health Empowerment 2.0. And Health Empowerment 2.0, our goal is for it to be a platform that allows for user customization, that can deliver HIV prevention and care adherence, lots of different components to it, components that can be turned off and on. We've moved towards partnership with a tech company that's more of a really of a 50-50 investment from both of us. So the technology company is as invested in the work as we are, and the vision is to be able to use this to provide other researchers with the ability to have a platform to start from within a reasonable budget, faster turnaround time than having to start from scratch. And again, this is sort of our model. Again, I am not Apple. I have not created anything near the iPhone 15 or so forth. But the idea, again, is around, why we keep iterating on our platform is this model, is that, to continue to make things better, to phase things out and on and in based on their appeal, and rather than starting over each and every time. So, even if health empowerment in whatever study isn't effective, it doesn't mean that you throw out the whole platform. It means that maybe the feature, or maybe that the way we delivered that intervention to the population didn't work, but the platform is still the platform. And again, these are some of the things that we've incorporated. Again, this is based on, as I said before, what do we know about that we need to increase engagement? And again, a lot of these things are the same components that I showed you before about what makes successful health. We know engagement leads to better health outcomes. So ergo, we need to include these. So tailoring, social support, game-based elements make something, it has to be a little bit fun, or a little bit, rewarding to do it, because we're asking people to use these interventions in a space in competition with other things that are much more interesting than our interventions are ever going to be. And then again, self-monitoring and reminders. So again, all of that is packed into health empowerment. This is just one home screen based on one intervention. The home screen can change based on what you find and you want to include, but these are just some of the features that are kind of standard, that all can be customized for use. One of the things that over the years we've realized is the integrations within the platform. So integrating of surveys, so we can connect with RedCap. Incentives, we connect with Tango gift cards so that the incentives can be received through the app. Again, a way to increase engagement. Special specimen collection for test kits, etc. So lots of different features. I'm hoping I can play this. This is just one of our videos that talk about one of the features of health empowerment. And so let's see if that works.
Welcome back to the Health Empowerment Spotlight series. In this episode, we're shining a light on a tool that not only lets participants track their sexual activity, but also encourages self-reflection. Let's take a look at the Love Log. The Love Log allows participants to track past love encounters with intricate detail. Who was it with? How was it? What was their HIV status? The Love Log encourages participants to reflect on their past experiences and understand their intimate life patterns. But the Love Log isn't just about the past. It's also a tool for planning the future. If a participant is using on-demand PrEP, the Love Log offers them the opportunity to set reminders for the 2-1-1 schedule. 2 pills 2 to 24 hours before sex, 1 pill 24 hours after, and another 24 hours after that. Now, let's connect the dots. Within the health tracker, participants' Love Log entries come to life on their calendar. These highlights reveal patterns, helping them make informed decisions about medication adherence and reducing HIV and STI risks. The Love Log is a participant's companion in understanding their sexual health journey. It bridges the past, the future, and the present. This is just one of the incredible tools within health empowerment, designed to empower participants on their path to well-being. Welcome back to
sorry.
the Health.
Okay. So we have a whole series of different videos spotlighting kind of different features of the app. So that's just one of them. So I think, in my mind, we've been really successful about getting H&P out to folks to use in different studies, whether they be focusing on PrEP or ART outcomes, as well as engagement in care. We have interventions for mental health, stigma reduction, and then using it as a platform to maintain virtual cohort engagement across some of these NIAID sponsored light studies. We've also have studies being able to provide H&P to URM investigators and folks that are on K or training grants, where again, the resource costs that they have with these grants does not allow for kind of the development of a full app. So being able to really kind of say, here, start with this, here's kind of a fully developed app, and really use your money to tailor it to your population, to make the avatars relevant, or the information relevant, et cetera. So we've been really, I think, excited about our ability to really kind of get this app out. Again, we've worked a lot to help folks in global settings think about what makes this app more successful. So again, really thinking about how to make the app use less data, low bandwidth, what pieces of the app need to be available when there is no connections or data blackouts, et cetera, and how to make it kind of light so that it runs, et cetera. Again, I think we've thought a lot about it, kind of how to we also engage with implementation science approaches to work with CBOs, NGOs, et cetera, in the process of adapting different versions of H&P to be most successful. Our most recent grant that we just got is through the Patch IN, or Patch Implementation Network. So this is a partnership between our group and the University of Maryland, and the plan is to adapt H&P across 4 countries in Africa, and do an implementation trial enrolling 1,500 youth living with and at risk for HIV into a kind of a delayed control arm testing the app. So final thoughts on kind of digital health. Again, I'm always excited about this field. I don't know what else I would do. So, I've been doing this my whole career. So I think that there's more that we can continue to do, learn, use to understand adherence behaviors and the context of non-adherence, really kind of do better, move past, again, just reminding people to take their meds, or being thinking about kind of static information, and really kind of trying to be more innovative and in real time. Again, I think this is developing actionable adherence monitoring. If we're monitoring, what are we doing with this information? How do we really kind of intervene to maximize better health outcomes? And again, I think there's a lot of room in this space to do better, and a lot of that obviously centers around making our interventions more engaging. And again, I think continued focus on scale up is really important in dissemination, and how do we think about again, these privacy, the partnerships with public tech companies. This is a lot of things that I think about, and again, how do we really think about continuing to work to make these interventions accessible? Again, in my ideal world, health empowerment is something that everyone can access and everyone wants. We're certainly not there yet, but that's again, kind of the continued goal. So just again, a couple minutes on the new ATN at the request of Claude. So the Adolescent Medicine Trials Network for HIV interventions, or the ATN. So it is the only US-based network focused on ending the HIV epidemic for adolescents in the United States. The new ATN, so the ATN has been around for 20 years. This is what we call ATN 5, meaning it was kind of a new competing for a new funding cycle. And a new structure. So there's been lots of different structures of the ATN, but this is really this complicated, but really the way we think about it is a kind of a cog structure where there's all different parts and they're working together. My role is in the Scientific Leadership Center, which is the dark blue, which really is where housed the Statistical and Data Management Group and all of the study protocols, as well as the scientific leadership. There's also an Operations and Collaboration Center held, being run by Westat, which kind of is where the site consortiums live, as well as some of the other organizational meeting and operations activities. So I'm MPIs on this project with Sybil Hosek, who's at the University of Illinois, Chicago. Sybil and I have been colleagues for many, many, many years. She joined the ATN in 2004. I joined in 2006. So we've been working together for, now 18, 19 years. And I think we're complementary in our expertise. But I think both of us are just very, very passionate about adolescent work, as well as kind of a team-based approach to networks, and really about also kind of fostering a place where early stage investigators and others are really kind of valued and have a chance. So kind of an open, transparent network is really where we're striving to be. Again, this is what is under our Scientific Leadership Center. So again, it's centered around these youth subject matter research consultants. They really kind of are the cornerstone of all that we do, is really focusing on youth. Again, we house that Statistical and Data Management core, which also includes modeling core. We have, again, a communications and disseminations hub housed at the University of Michigan under Christy Gammerl, who really kind of thinks about how we're, putting out information about the ATN, kind of the work that we're doing, policies, clinical decision things, as well as our studies from the very beginning, rather than kind of waiting till the end. We have an excellent grants management team. And then we have scientific leadership teams. So our SLG, our scientific leadership group, is a team-based approach. Again, you can see we really tried to organize it across different topics that all impact each and every protocol that comes through the ATN. I think your own Claude Mellons is leading the Assets, Resources, Challenges, and Context, or the ARC leadership group. We're really excited about all the work that these different groups have already done in thinking about not only the protocols within the ATN, but the larger impact. And then we started our application. We submitted, we had 7 protocols that came through that were all kind of moved forward to be rolled out. All the protocols kind of addressed, different populations of youth. When possible, we tried to make our protocol status neutral, again, addressing different priority areas of the ATN, whether it's, diagnosing HIV, preventing new infections, et cetera. So all the continuum areas, interventions, really we require them to, when possible, to address kind of different intervention levels and different regulatory phases. And so again, a lot of these studies are, close to actually launching. So we were funded in January, end of January of this year. And we are hoping to get some of these studies into the field really within the next month. And so we're trying to make some rapid progress. We also have 2 new protocols that one being led by Justin Knox, who's at Columbia, around alcohol and its impact on prevention and treatment among youth, and then a study that's focused on doxy-PEP. So our goal is not to rest on kind of the laurels of what we submitted, but we have an open concept submission phase. You can always submit a concept. Just again, reach out to me and I'll provide you with our concept form. We will also be having a request for applications probably sometime next year, where we'll have kind of a theme as to what we're looking for. But again, if you have any questions about, the ATN, you can always reach out to myself or Sybil or Claude, who now has become an expert in the ATN. So I think that's all I had. Leave some time for discussion, questions. So I will thank you all. I think certainly our funders and the folks that I work with at IDHI as well. So